Which, what gets stuck in my head is Compton, which is not the same.
Well, yeah. No.
Same thing,
No, it's not
but-
the same thing. Yeah.
Anyway, so it's just you and me today. There's no music.
That's right. So Sue is sick. Mark's on vacation.
Yeah.
And I showed up not knowing any of this, and now all of a sudden I'm on stage.
Yes. But you're good at that, right?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
You were a substitute teacher, a teacher, a professor.
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of, I mean,
yeah.
You've taught college classes, high
I've
school
taught-
classes,
right.
junior high classes.
Yeah. I mean, I was still a graduate student. So.
Have you ever taught an elementary class, like a 6th grade and under class?
I don't know if I officially taught it as a teacher. I've done a lot of different teaching things over the years.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. And some of that was in Boy Scouts. Some of that was through my church. So like Sunday school class. I mean, if that counts, maybe.
No,
right?
there you
So,
go.
yeah.
You've done Sunday school class.
Right. You know, summer camp,
Summer
vacation,
camp,
Bible
yep.
school, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Were you an Eagle Scout?
Mhm,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. That's right. There's a couple Eagle Scouts at the village.
Oh, yeah? Do you know who else
I
is?
think Philip is an Eagle Scout.
Oh, okay.
I believe
That would make
so.
sense.
Philip Summits. I think
Yeah.
he's an Eagle Scout. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's
I-
a few other people, but I just don't remember who. I'm sure they'll text me if they're watching.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can give each other the secret handshake and stuff.
Is there a secret handshake?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
No. I mean,
Just a
It's-
secret salute or something?
it's not really anything secret,
Okay.
honestly, these days anyway.
There's
maybe
no
maybe earlier
secrets?
back. Yeah, no, not really. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is our 4th week doing this. You taught the first one.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
no, I guess
no,
it's-
you actually taught the first one.
Yeah, that's right. But it's sort of it's the 4th week of us talking about kind of what it looks like to think critically about things, to address what's happening in the world from a gospel perspective. It's
Right.
horrible.
Yeah. So I once read this book by a guy named Leslie Newbigin.
Yes, I've read lots of lessons.
Oh, okay. All right. Very cool, interesting character.
Very dense. The thing that I remember from beginning to read, oh gosh, which one did I read? I read 2 of his books. But the typeset in the book I was reading was
it's really
so small and so close
I
together.
feel like they did that to save pages because they didn't have like a great publisher or something.
Probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, Leslie Newbigin, who was a missiologist.
Yeah. So, I mean, he also clearly studied a ton of philosophy. I mean, I don't know how much formal training he had in philosophy or how much he really super dug in himself into the
Yeah,
philosophers
he's
or
a
texts.
missionary to India.
Yeah, but I mean, he definitely did some study. I read this book by him called Proper Confidence.
Okay.
I don't know if I would say I don't think it's a must read, but I really like the phrasing of proper confidence
Yes.
because I think that's a good way to put what we're trying to do with our beliefs is that we're trying to put our beliefs in proper confidence.
Yeah.
So some things are worthy of the utmost confidence, right? Jesus is Lord, right?
Yes.
That's one, for
Yeah.
example, right? But others are not worthy of the same level of confidence. So you want to have the proper amount of confidence in whatever thought that you have.
Yeah.
That seems to be kind of what the project is.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. And we're kind of coming at it from different places. It
Oh
seems
yeah,
a
for
bit.
sure. And I have no problem with that.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing, I think. I think about Leslie Newbigin. I think he's the most quotable author. Like when you really want to, when other authors are trying to make a point and they want it to be articulated well, they'll grab a Leslie Newbigin
Right.
and put him in there because he has some great like summing up of things.
Yeah,
he will do.
it's just hard because he like goes on this whole history of philosophy, and then there's like this like abrupt turn where he like tries to do his own thing,
Okay.
and I didn't feel like there was a nice bridge from one to the other.
Yeah.
But I still like the phrase. The title of the book is so good, right? Proper confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So Leslie Newbigin's not for everybody, but he's a good read.
He's worth learning about. His
Yes.
biography is
Yeah.
amazing, right?
And he became, I think, president of the World Church Council or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
like that.
fantastic,
Yeah.
inspiring missionary.
Yes,
yeah.
he is. And I think he probably is the one who, like, he in inspired the missional church, and he
Hmm.
was the underpinnings of what we now know as the emerging church.
Yeah.
And
In fact, I think we had one of his books at some point in our entryway
yes,
to the church building. I don't remember which book it was, but
it's
yeah.
certainly in our library if you want to
Oh yeah,
read.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. So
So,
anyway, that's Leslie Newbigin.
yeah,
But
let's
the
leave it
larger
again.
point,
I'll go
the
off
larger
on author.
point is that we're trying to instill the proper confidence
Sure.
or have some kind of framework for even figuring out like what that would mean to have proper confidence in thoughts,
Yeah.
ultimately in beliefs that we have.
And one of the reasons we were thinking about, there's a lot of reasons for this, but one of the reasons we were thinking about this conversation is that just as human beings, we already have lots of thoughts in our
yeah.
head.
Yeah.
And then in this time and this period of space that we live in, there seems to be many touch points where people are forcing thoughts, opinions, and events are bringing more thoughts and opinions all at once at us. And we're having to sort out fast. We have to move fast. Our brain is having to try to work overtime to even hold what it feels, believes, thinks about life. And
Yeah.
and then it gets challenged really quick by others. And
Yeah. Because like kind of the economy, the regular rhythm of life just kind of went abruptly to a halt. And
Yes.
then all of a sudden we had all of this time to sit around and consume media, talk to each other about things, right? Post things on social media to each other, comment on each other's Facebook posts, like all of that kind of stuff just exploded.
Yes, it did. And
Right.
it was already exploding before. I mean, it's been
Well, yeah, no, I mean it's been exploding for what, like the last 2 decades now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And we're struggling as a species even,
I think
let
so.
alone a culture of the United States to try and figure out how to deal with that new reality that's been brought about by the technology that we have.
Yeah. And I think we were trying to grab hold of, or we are trying to grab hold of sort of the values of our community, the things that make our community work and move forward, and understand who Jesus is, and try to grab hold of those to help people anchor themselves in a little bit as they're thinking things through.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean and they're great stuff. Like we have great stuff already, and that's one of the things that I read when I first spoke in this little series was just taking the time to read most of what our community had already written and put up on our website under the value of truth. And we have so many resources as a community of believers, right? As a community of Jesus, as people of God. Like, we've got a lot of resources that are available to us. And I really actually I loved your analogy. I've thought more about it since first hearing it, and I've probably heard it. I've watched it through at least twice at this point.
Okay.
Maybe 3 times.
What
I don't
is-
know if
what
I've
analogy is
I don't
this?
know. Well, the analogy is like it's of an expert fighter who can still be knocked off guard
Right.
by something surprising that some new fighter might bring to the ring.
Right.
Right. And so you can be knocked off balance, maybe even knocked down, but then you get up and you realize, oh no, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'll just plant myself more fully in my footwork that I already know.
Right.
Right. And I feel like we can do that.
Yeah. No,
Right.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Well, that's yeah. So I think, there is a lot going on in our community. I mean, just even from like Lindy, not to take a little bit of turn, but Lindy was in the hospital and now she's out. People are struggling with employment. People are having babies. People,
Sure.
and we're all.
People got married.
People got married during this
Yep.
time. I did 2, what you might call COVID weddings,
Right. Exactly.
which,
And
had
there was
kind
at
of
least a couple more that, even that you didn't
that I was
officiate.
right
Yeah.
that I wasn't part of
Right.
that happened.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That we're all connected to. So life goes on, and yet it goes on in a really, it's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, it's great to be here with you in person.
Right.
Like it's like one
Not
of the
socially distanced.
No, but I
Because
mean,
we have to be in some kind of camera
right,
shot.
right. But I mean, it's great to be participating physically, and I recognize it as a privilege that I have that members of the other community, members of the wider church community that we have don't get to do.
Right.
Like I'm doing stuff, like I have this scary position of like coming up with things to say that are wise and helpful, right?
Sure.
So I mean, I am contributing, I'm running the soundboard, but still, like, it's a highlight of my week to be able to be here with you and Sue and Mark, right? Just this kind of small group of people that are helping put on these video streams.
Right.
But yeah, it's been tough. It's been really tough, and it makes it so much more special for me right now. And I'm really hoping that more people can start to get back to meeting in person with us. But, I don't know how long that's going to be.
Well, yeah, there's some stuff on the horizon. You should,
Good.
I suspect, if you haven't gotten it, you will. No, I know. You will get it tomorrow. When you get the newsletter, you're going to get two things that are important. One, you're going to get the fasting worksheet for Saturday, which I'm really excited about. I think it's one of our best ones, and that you should really jump in and do the things that it asks you to do. And the other is you're going to get a survey. And the survey is similar to the last time's survey in that it's looking for, kind of touching in on, hey, this is kind of my habits of watching and listening. But then there's a more comprehensive, like, this is kind of the things I need. And here's some things I might want to do, like to help out, like I could help out. And then also there is a question about regathering in September and kind of seeing where people are with that as we kind of build a plan to do that at some level in September.
That would be really awesome.
And that all depends on what kind of, what the curve really looks like at some level. But I think we're planning on gathering. It might end up looking smaller than normal. We normally plan, but there'll be more than 4 of us is what we're trying to
say. Right. More than 4 is great. I mean, not that the 4 have not been great, but I'm just saying, like, it's something that I would want many more people in the church to be able to have the opportunity to participate in person with worship and, conversation and it's really, really cool to have that. And I definitely miss it. So, and this now is like just so awesome.
Yeah, this is it. Wow. Well, I miss the music, like
true.
It's you and me.
Yeah, well, there was definitely a lot of foot stamping and head nodding that I don't know if I was as vigorous always, but I did a lot of that the first night I was back helping with the
right
with the soundboard. I just felt like it was like, oh yeah, we're doing some music. Yeah, no music tonight.
No music tonight.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my voice is a little bit musical at points.
Yeah, you have that, like we said, you have that voice. That's kind of funny. Yeah, to tell you the truth, like most of what I have to say is all caught up in 2 Kings chapter 19, so I don't have a lot more on my brain. I don't know about you. I don't know if you have anything to...
I mean, I read a really great article about biblical justice and contrasting it with... Comparing and contrasting it with
Tim Keller's article?
Yeah, it was a Tim Keller's article.
Yes,
I thought
so
it was really excellent.
that was one of the articles. I have 2 articles and a book that I'm going to recommend this week that people begin to read and explore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's something that people need to necessarily read this week, right?
No.
But it was a great article, and it was just published this week, right?
Yeah, it is a good article.
And it was a little dry, but it was good, really good. And even where I feel like I would have points of disagreement or I would want more clarification or something like that, it was a fantastic starting point for, I thought, a really quality look at what the Bible teaches about justice and how that interacts with our culture's idea of justice, or ideas of justice, since they're multiple. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really worth my time. trying to think if there's anything else that was really on my mind. That was probably the biggest one.
Yeah, I don't have a lot on my brain at the moment.
Okay, cool.
So
Do you want me to get out of the frame and let you?
might as well just
Okay,
I might
all
as
right.
well just start and talk to
Okay.
people, because people are probably like, "Oh, come on, guys, just let's get this thing going." We're gonna do a little camera work, everybody. There we go. Put that up there. I was putting together Michael's video or from his talk last week today, and I put it up so you can go listen to it. Also the audio is on our podcast, but I just like Michael was saying at the very beginning, all right, we're doing this by the seat of our pants. Okay, guys, we're trying to figure this out. And I left that in because it just felt really human. It's very, village-like, where, we're not high production. You're seeing me in 480, which means I'm blurry, but that's the best streaming at this point. Maybe we can negotiate with Cox at some point, but I don't know if it's worth the money, to be honest, to get better upload speed. But I'm going to pray and we'll get started talking. Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come at 8:30 and be able to communicate with people in the community and in the world and talk about you and talk about what you're doing, and also just to be human and to be, just to be our broken selves and to offer that to you and to the people around us. And I just ask, Jesus, that as I talk, that your Spirit would be in me, that you would give me words to say, you would help me to remember the things that I think are important. Yeah. I just ask that in your holy name. Amen. So I think in 1998, I was leading a college ministry. And through a whole bunch of circumstances, that ministry was going to have to kind of go out on its own. And 1998 puts me in my late 20s, maybe mid-20s. And I'm leading a bunch of 19 to 21-year-olds, trying to figure out who they are. And we didn't know what we were going to do because the church we were at, we couldn't be at anymore. And I remember, and this would be very insider, as in the sense of being a follower of Jesus, being a Christian. This is very insider Christian, so you might not know what I'm talking about if you're not a follower of Jesus and you've just tuned in. But there was this band named Petra, and I really loved that band, and they had a song that the title was "This Means War." And I got my little boom box and I played that song at the beginning of one of our services as I was kind of introducing to everybody what we were going to do. I mean, and this was the beginning, for those of you who know, and this is inside our village, but if those of you know the Seneca House, this was the beginning, because we were going to move to the Seneca House. Our whole ministry was moving there. That's where we were going to have our services, and that's where I was going to live, and Keith and Julie were going to live. And so I kind of wanted to frame everybody this idea of us going out on our own, as in the sense of we're going to war, but it's not war with the people, but it's a war against the spiritual darkness that was pervasive in Tucson. And I just felt like we're going to war. And that I realized that theme, and because it's in Scripture, but that theme has always been part of my relationship and my life with God and my time in prayer, is that when I pray, it's not a passive thing. I really truly think both that I am communicating with God, but that I'm also standing in a sense against darkness and saying, you can't come any further in these spaces, and also asking God to intervene. Like I really have always seen myself in that kind of light, and also seen the church that way. And I think, to be really honest with you, it has been super hard since March, since we stopped meeting together, because for me, the gathered church is the place. And I know that the church gathers, and that God says, or Jesus says, where two or three are gathered, there I am. I understand that, but there's some kind of sense that when the church gathers and it sings and it listens to the word of God being read and it eats together and it engages, that it is a light, a force in the world that says no to darkness and provides peace and a safe space for people, and encourages people to live and walk in the light. And a lot of that comes in our prayer together, that like we fight together. And so over the last few months, and this I think will be the third month, we've invited you on the second Saturday of each month just to fast and pray. But because we're disconnected right now, we don't gather, other than watching live stream or maybe getting together with a few of us in different spaces. We're actually pretty isolated, though more and more of us are trying to engage one another, but we're kind of isolated. And so this idea of us fasting and praying and following kind of the hours, so that we're saying, oh, okay, at 6 o'clock, I know that there are some other villagers who are looking at the same scripture, answering the same questions, and praying for similar things. And I'm joining them in this conflict against evil. And, Paul I repeat this over and over again, but Paul in Ephesians 6 affirms this, that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but of prince and principality, that when you step into following Jesus, you are invited as a community to push out against darkness and to create safe spaces for people through your prayer. So this invitation is to join the community in doing that. This invitation of fasting this Saturday is, come do that with villagers at 6 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, and 10 o'clock and noon. And follow the day through. And join me. Now, the reason that we've been fasting and praying is really connected to this time of Compline in a sense, and that we understand that one of the ways that you and I can bring our thoughts into submission is through prayer. We understand that when we dedicate time to pray, and we set it aside instead of doing other things, we begin the practice and discipline of changing how our mind encounters the thoughts that come in it. And so that's the beginning point to being able to handle all the different things that have been coming at us, and you know what they are. But today, what we're going to talk about is Hezekiah's prayer out of 2 Kings chapter 19. And all we're going to do is look at his prayer. So I need to give just a tiny bit of context so that you know what's happening. The Assyrians, who are much worse than the Babylonians, the Assyrians have taken the northern kingdom, wiped them out basically, and taken them and scattered them all over the place. And all that is left is Judah and the southern kingdom and King Hezekiah. And the Assyrians and King Sennacherib decide they're going to come down and finish off the southern kingdom. And so they've come to destroy Judah, and they've pretty much mocked. Oh, hey, Siri's talking to me. Oh. Yeah. Siri didn't understand what I was talking about. This is not a good thing. We can talk about that some other time about technology. But anyway, the Assyrians have come down, and which I could see that. Assyrians, hey Siri. There we go. Anyway, the Assyrians have come down, and basically the king has said, look, we've destroyed everybody else. We destroyed Israel. We destroyed everyone else with all their gods and their deities, like they were no match for us. So why do you think your God is going to be a match for us? We're going to destroy you and we're going to destroy him. And so in chapter 19, I've spoken of Ezekiel, but Hezekiah, he puts sackcloth and ashes on. So he puts himself in a humble space. He invites all of his other people around him to do that. And then he goes and calls for the prophet Isaiah, and then he prays. And I want to just look at his prayer. So I'm going to read the whole prayer to you, and then I want to break it down because I think it speaks to how you and I might interact with the world and what's happening in it and how it might change who we are. So I'll read the whole prayer to you. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord. Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods, but only wood and stone fashioned by human hands. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. Then Isaiah son of Amoz sent a message to Hezekiah. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I have heard your prayer concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. And then there's this long thing about what God is going to do to Sennacherib. But all I want to do today is really quickly look at this prayer and look at how it might help us as we advocate for people, as we begin to create a discipline of praying and clearing our mind. So Hezekiah's prayer has 3 parts, and I'm just going to kind of go through the parts. So the first part is that Hezekiah acknowledges who God is. And when I was a little kid, like 5, I thought that my dad was the fastest runner. Like I would race him from the car to the house and he could always beat me. And I thought, my dad's the fastest. No one can run faster than him. When I got a little older, I think like 2nd or 3rd grade, we moved to Miami, Arizona. And the thing was, I remember these conversations about, oh, my dad can drink the hottest salsa. I do not know why 2nd and 3rd graders are talking about this, but they were comparing their father's ability to drink salsa. And I thought, well, my dad eats a lot of spicy food. For sure he can drink the hottest salsa. Not only that, though, that my father was in Vietnam, and sometimes he would show me some of his fighting stances and how to protect yourself. And I thought, my dad is strong and he knows some form of karate and he could kill people. My dad can beat up everybody, right? That little kid approach, that understanding of my father has actually helped me understand how to relate to God and how to engage God. And what I think is interesting here is that Hezekiah, before he asks for anything, acknowledges God in 4 different ways. And I just want to look at them because I think they're instructive to us in the sense of us kind of using them to help develop a confidence in who God is in our life. So the first thing he says is, Lord, the God of Israel. So he acknowledges that there is an intimate relationship between Hezekiah and his people and God. And it's an intimate relationship that isn't between Assyria and God or any other nation. That is theirs. It's God of Israel. Right? And that, when I think about, me, like with my dad, it's my dad. Like there's just, all that's really is what Hezekiah is saying in a really simplified form is that you're my dad. You're our dad. You're the one, who has brought us here. The second thing, though, he says is that you're enthroned between the cherubim. Now, this is important because the cherubim and the are in the temple, and basically this is where the footstool of God is. And so this, for Israel, the temple is where heaven and earth meet. That does not mean that God isn't everywhere else, but what it does mean is that in a significant way, God has said, my presence is going to rest in Israel. I'm going to mark them as my people by being present with them. So what Hezekiah is saying is, you're our dad, and you have marked us as your own. You have identified that we are your people. So this is important. Those are the first two parts. The third part is, he says, you alone, God, are over all the kingdoms of the earth. So it's not just that, dad is faster, and it's not just that dad can drink salsa, better than every other dad, but it's also that he's dominant over all other dads, right? That there isn't any king that is over God, right? There's no kingdom that somehow falls outside of who God is. And so Hezekiah is affirming that, but then he goes on and gets even more grand in his fourth part, and he says, you have made heaven and earth. So not only are you over all the kingdoms of the earth, you made the earth, so nothing can contain you. This is all it is Hezekiah, in a sense, reciting his theology. He's saying, okay, you're our God, you've marked us, you are over all the other kingdoms, that means you're over Assyria, and on top of that, you're over the entire earth because you created it, so nothing contains you. All right, he's putting that forward, but what he's doing is he's saying it out loud. He's praying it. And I think it's really, really important to pray out loud. Now, I know it's kind of awkward to do it with friends sometimes, but it's important to pray out loud because something happens to your brain. The chemistry changes. The more, when I was practicing this a little bit, the more I would say, my dad can drink the salsa, my dad can do this, I'm like, yeah, my dad is pretty awesome. Like, things are starting to change in my brain. I'm starting to have connections happen. When you and I say God is our God, and he's enthroned above all things, and he is king over all things, and he created the earth, our brain begins to say, oh yeah, no, that's the way it is. And what happens is it changes our posture, right? It changes the way we understand our relationship to God, because we're rehearsing what is true, right? We're practicing what is true by speaking it out loud. And what it does is it enforces our belief when we speak it out loud. And so I would invite you, especially on Saturday, but also in all of your prayers, to begin to practice the truths you know about God when you pray, when you begin. And maybe they're really simple for you. God, you made the mountains. God, you made the sea. Maybe you're a very theological person and you can remember some of these things about how you're enthroned between cherubim. Maybe you remember that kind of thing. But more importantly, that you begin to repeat what you know to be true about God. Now, so that's part one, is really just saying, hey, this is who you are, God, and I know how we're connected. The second part, I think, is really important. It says, give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words of Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. God already knows all of that. Right? God is not like all of a sudden surprised that Sennacherib is right outside of Judea. He's not like, oh my gosh, how did they get there? That's not it. But what I think is important here, and that Hezekiah understands to be true, is that God, in however he does it, wants us to engage him in what's happening in the world. He wants us to speak and call his attention and invite him to be present in the things that we're concerned about and we're anxious about and we're worried about. And the crazy thing is that God acts on these things, right? Because they're clearly linked for Hezekiah to the fact that he's made heaven and earth and that he's God over all the kingdoms and that he is their God. And therefore he can call his attention to things. When I talked earlier about how I really do understand my spiritual life as something that is warlike, in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 18, after Paul has explained how the church is supposed to put the armor of God on, he says that we're supposed to also pray and pray in the Spirit and pray always for all the church and all the people. And then he says, and pray in particular for me that I would be fearless in preaching the gospel and that the Spirit would come on me and I would have words to say. There's an invitation as followers of Jesus, right? There's an invitation that we have to advocate for our brothers and sisters, to advocate for the oppressed and the poor and those who are in places that are not good. So for Hezekiah, Assyria is at his doorstep and there's nothing he can do. Part of prayer is saying we don't know what to do, but you need to take a look at this. So I don't think we do this much, but my invitation is for you, particularly this Saturday, and you'll have this invitation in the worksheet, is for you to say, okay, God, I want you to turn your eyes to this particular suffering in the world. I want you to turn your eyes to this particular issue in my husband or wife's life. I want you to turn your eyes on this in my child's life, and this when it comes to dealing with issues of the African American community. I want you to deal with, do you see this? And in particular, what I think we need to understand is that maybe the Assyrians are not coming to our door, but darkness is always coming to our door. And everything that we see happening in the world, there is a deep and evil that is out to destroy our image. The enemy wishes to destroy the image of God, and he will do it anyway. And our job is to say, God, you need to look at this. You need to do something. Do you see what's happening? Do you see what's happening? Because, I think a lot of times what happens is when we see things like, well, let's just talk about our situation. We have gotten to a place where we see things when it comes to the racial things in our community and the social things, and what are you going to do about the virus and wearing masks and not wearing masks and quarantine and gathering and the politics and the two presidential candidates and our president. And what we think is we need to do something. We need to figure it out. We need to have an opinion. We gotta act now. But as followers of Jesus, I'm not saying we're not supposed to act, but it seems to me that over and over again, the encouragement is not to act without fully inviting and pleading for God to act and for God to intervene. And that one of the most powerful ways that you and I can advocate for the poor is to get on our hands and knees and pray. And for the oppressed is to get on our hands and knees and pray. And not just, God, would you please change, but would you change this thing, but would you open your eyes? Open your ears. Would you see what's going on here? We need you to act in this space. I think this is really powerful. This is the place that you and I get to go to war, the way we get to put into our emotion behind what is good and true is to hang on to what we know who God is and begin to plead for him to do things. One of the funny things in my marriage is that I will routinely come to my wife, and it's happened less over the years, but it happened a lot in our early marriage, and I'd be like, oh, I've figured this thing out about me. I'm going to make this change in my life, and my wife would just smile at me and say, oh, well, I've been praying for that for a year. She's been praying this prayer. Open your eyes, God, to the things that are happening in my husband's life. But she never told me. She just got on her hands and knees and prayed that this change would happen. And then she, and it did. Now, I'm not saying that, you don't do things, but we have to understand that the God of the universe can powerfully transform and engage the places where there is brokenness if we'll invite him into them. Now, verse 17, so that's part 2, but then part 3 is just where he's basically saying, okay, well, this is what I want you to do. He says, it's true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they are not gods, but only wood and stone fashioned by human hands. Now, Lord, our God, deliver us from his hands so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. Now, what I like first is that he just asks for what he wants. He's like, hey, I know here's the context, God, but this is what I want. Will you deliver us? It's pretty simple, straightforward. Will you see what's going on? Will you deliver us? Will you see what's happening in these people's lives, and will you change it? Right? Simple. But then he adds the reason for it, and that is that the earth may know that the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. On Sunday, we talked about how Israel had the job of being a a priest nation. And we talked about how, as followers of Jesus, we are to be priests. What do priests do? They make known who God is to everyone else. They tell the world who God is. And what Hezekiah is saying is, you're the only one that can make our job work. You have to show them who you are, because they think that you're just a stone God, and you need to show them that Israel follows the one true God. Deliver us, and that will show them. I think that's crazy, because the thing that we're asking when we advocate for people is not, hey, will you make, my life better? Will you make their life better? Yeah, no, what you're saying is, will you intervene so that you are known? Will you intervene in a way so that you are shown to be the one true God who changes things? Will you bring your light to bear on these things and point people to you? That is what we are asking for. We're not just asking for life to be better, for the oppressed to be less oppressed and the poor to be less poor, and for those of us who feel that we're struggling to not struggle anymore. We're actually praying that God will change things in a way that he's known, that the miraculous will happen so that he's known. Now, I love what the message that Isaiah gives from God is, I have heard your prayer concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria. So I love this part, because it's I, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, who's over all the kingdoms and made heaven and earth, that me, has heard you. I turned, I looked, I listened to your plea, and now I'm going to take care of Sennacherib. I'm going to do something, and my glory will be shown. And you can read that in the rest of the passage. I want to just be really honest with you. It hasn't been easy. I mean, I know it's been hard for everybody, but just to talk from my own perspective and my own place, it hasn't been easy to do what we've been doing. I've been pastor of the village for 20 years almost, along with Rod and now with Mark. And in that, the thing that we have pounded over and over again, and the thing that's so important to me, and the way I live out my faith, is to live in community, sandpaper shaping kind of thing, rubbing up against each other, sandpaper and raw skin, being shaped into the likeness of Christ. Gathering is important. The creative process that happens in the music and in the cooking and the way we care for one another and kids and the way we pray, all this integrated stuff means a lot to me. And to have it pulled apart is difficult. But not only is that difficult, I mean, I think I could handle it if it was just that, but in the midst of all of that, there's all this social unrest. And I sit with people and I talk, and I see that deep inside all of us, we have these opinions and we have these thoughts and we have these ideas, and sometimes they burst out and everybody gets really tense and afraid and scared, and we don't actually know what's true, and we think that somehow we need to find it. And so there's this tension that as a leader I feel like I'm supposed to say something to, and I'm supposed to have all the answers for. As I watch my children who are young, 19 and 15, try to figure out what it means to live in this world, and I think about the world was like when I was 15 and 19, and it's different. It's scary. This is a different world, and that creates a certain sadness in my heart. And honestly, I will say that some days I get up and I think about a different job and a different life and a different place, like probably everybody else. I get frustrated. I get anxious. I don't know what to do. I talk to elders. I pray with elders. Sometimes I'm in tears over all that's happening in our community and in our world, and other times I'm just angry, and other times I'm just depressed and sad about all the changes. And I haven't come to terms with all of that. And um, I feel like the invitation is to get on my hands and knees and pray. I think the invitation, in a lot of ways, maybe the shaking up of things, has confronted me with the fact that you, whatever, all your thoughts and all your philosophical, ponderings and things political things that you think, and all the ways you think the world should be, and how church should be, and how relationships should be, and all those things can easily crumble because in some ways they're just iron and wooden idols. Certainly there's truth in many of the things, but they often become idols for us, things that are going to give us life, things that are the answer. And yet I think the invitation from this passage in Hezekiah, and why I chose it a month or so ago, is that it really does illustrate the position that we truly are in. And that is, the Assyrians are at the door. And no matter what you think you can do to fix it, just like Hezekiah tried earlier to kind of fix it by stripping the gold off of of God's temple and sending it to the Assyrians, hoping that they just would leave them alone, and it didn't work. We sometimes are too fixed on what, my freedom and wearing a mask and the right ideas about systematic racism and the right thoughts about who should be president and what we have rights to and what should be happening and what our pastors should be doing and what I could go on. And the reality is that the only way that you and I are going to have any effectiveness, the only way that there's going to be any hope in this time that I actually think is pretty tumultuous and is not going to get better overnight, is that we have to be a community that gets on our hands and knees and says, the Assyrians are at the door. They are said a ton of stuff about you and they're going to destroy us. Can you open your eyes and do something? And that we don't just do it on Saturday this week, but that it becomes a habit. And as Michael was talking earlier today on the video here about my sermon and about the illustration of getting our feet under us as a fighter and being ready to take on something that's come out of the blue, I think being a people who is confident or in who God is and is willing to fervently and fearlessly ask God to act on his strength and power on the behalf of people that we love and care for and our world, and to pour out our longings for him to transform things and to make himself known in new ways, I think that's when things change. That's when we can have philosophies and theories. That's when we can truly have conversations about the right and wrong of things. Because I think there's a humbling of us when God goes before. And so I guess my invitation is to take up your sword with me today. And to know that your pastor is not necessarily handling all of this well. Yeah, lots of you see me and you think, oh, he seems like he's doing okay. And I am sometimes. But a lot of times, I don't even have words for the anguish that I feel and in this time. And the village over the last year or two has taken some hard hits with our elders and just sickness and struggle and emotional things. And we've taken, it's not all been easy in a lot of other areas. And so maybe we kind of are that stumbling around, caught off guard fighter, and God is saying, all right, it's time to get up. It's time to get your feet under you and to actually, I think what Michael said in the very beginning of the series, maybe 4 weeks ago, about how the website and how the village has developed a lot of good things to underpin it. We forget that we have anchored ourselves well into God and to who he is and who Jesus is and what the gospel is for us. And we have to hold on to that and get our feet set in it. And one of those things is we have to step into being a people of prayer. And so that's why we're inviting you to do that. And with that, I'm going to pray. Father, thank you for the video, and thank you for the opportunity to at least talk to Michael and to talk to the people on the other side of the screen. And I just pray that as people listen to this on the podcast and as people listen to this on the video, I just ask that you would give them a heart to be priests who just lay out what they want you to do and who know so deeply the power and of you, and they're willing to proclaim it and grab hold of it. So I ask that for my community, that you bless them and protect them, and thanks for this evening. Amen.